right, why don't we go ahead and get started? We're about 2-3 minutes after the hour. So first of all, thanks everyone for taking the time to join this webinar. And this is the next session in the IlliniCloud webinar series featuring Edsby. My name is Jat Pannu. I'm the business operations lead for IlliniCloud. And joining us today, we have Scott Welch, co-founder of Edsby. He's waving right there. As always, this is an interactive session, so please feel free to type in any questions you may have into the chat window, and we'll address them at the end of the session. If you'd like to share out your contact information, go ahead and type those into the chat as well, and we'll record them. As a reminder, the IlliniCloud webinars are every Wednesday at noon Central Time, given different vacation calendars and etc. And the recordings are posted to the IlliniCloud YouTube channel. You can find the complete list of upcoming webinars in the email announcement, but our next webinar will be Wednesday, April 19th, and the topic will be gravity gaming. So with that, Scott, please feel free to introduce yourself and share your screen, and let's get started.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you very much. So let's just get the sharing turned on. There we go, share my desktop. And let's go here. And you should now see my screen. You guys got all that?
You see it. Looks great.
Excellent. Perfect. Okay, so my name is Scott Welch. I'm one of the co-founders of Edsby. And today we're going to be talking to you a little bit about what Edsby is, how it works, and do a little bit of a demo as well. So I'm wondering, let me just minimize that. There we go. I'll minimize my picture here so it's out of the way. Okay. So a little bit of background about us. We've been playing in this pond for a long time. So we've been working together for 30 years. We have deep experience building very scalable education software out to the largest districts in the US. We've even done a few countrywide deployments. We have a long background building for K-12. We were the original developers of a product called First Class that some of you may have used. So let me talk to you a little bit about sort of the world out there. And obviously you guys live this today. I'm sort of singing to the choir here, but it's worthwhile talking a little bit about some of the challenges out there. So when we look out there in the world today, there's a lot of new technology that people are interested in, but one of the challenges is that teachers are left to their own, and they're choosing software on their own, and they're choosing software which is not necessarily integrated with the stuff that you run in the district. This results in things like too many apps for parents to look at. It's really difficult for people to get a unified view of what's going on. And people are choosing platforms that are not built for K-12. Business solutions that cost too much, they don't scale. Maybe they're freeware that have security challenges. Maybe they're systems that are built for higher ed and they don't have great support for parents. There's some real problems with some of the products that are out there. And the other thing is that teachers are choosing lightweight alternatives that they quickly outgrow. So, you know, they're using Google Classroom, but there's no way to tie in the parents, right? They're using some of these free websites they sign up for, but, you know, very quickly there's not an automated admin tool and they give them up really quickly. Case in point, my child's school uses Google Classroom. He was having troubles in math. He's in grade 9. I discovered that by getting a snail mail letter in my mailbox. Clearly not the best solution. The other thing that's really interesting out there in the world is that there's a series of technology waves that are kind of peaking right now. Cloud, which is really interesting because I come from an on-prem software background, and seeing what's happening with cloud is really interesting. Mobile technology is affecting things. The sort of the social concept is really changing the way that we use computers. And last but not least,
hey Scott, we're getting a bit of an echo.
Yeah, there was a bit of feedback. It just started, eh?
Yeah. Doesn't sound like it's there anymore. So keep going.
Yeah, no, I think it's gone now. You're right. And big data, which is also sort of transforming the way that we can interact with data. And Edsby sort of helps you play in all of these four worlds. And the basic idea behind Edsby is really pretty straightforward. We want to build a comprehensive learning and analytics platform built just for K-12. That's our goal in life, and we've been working on this for 7 years now. There's some things that really set us apart. One of the things is that we're not a higher ed play, that we're just kind of scratched higher ed out and wrote K-12 in crayon. We've got deep support for elementary. we can drive high student and teacher and parent engagement, and we can deliver new insights into educational effectiveness throughout your entire user base. And that goes right down to people like parents and kids. So how do we do this? Well, we give you the ability to do assessments. We build a real-time system for dashboards and responses back to parents and kids. We personalize information. So instead of a giant fire hose through something like a teacher website, we're personalizing the information for the people who need it. We're giving students the ability to interact with their teachers the way they interact with the rest of their lives. I mentioned I got kids in grade 9 and 11. You know, these guys are on Instagram, they're on Facebook, they get the social thing, and this gives them social tools, but in a safe and controlled way. It's a single application. So for parents and for kids, they have one place to go to get all the information they need. And last but not least, we're adopting some of the changes in the way that people do assessments and the way people track evidence of learning. We're going where K-12 is going. How do we do this? Well, the answer is pretty straightforward. Edsby is a suite of applications from classroom management all the way to advanced analytics. But the key thing is we build this by deploying with your systems of record inside the district. So the Edsby Link Universal Integration Platform allows us to tie into your identity management system, your SIS, Google Apps for Edge or O365 if you happen to be using that, other data like your HR database and your standardized test results. And the goal here, and in fact what we do, is we can deploy in your district without adding to your total cost of ownership. We do that by automating all of the deployment stuff. So there's no administration inside of Edsby. We do it by slaving to your systems of record. Then, once we know who the students and the teachers and the parents and the classes and so on and so forth, then we can build Edsby and build it with the right permissions and access control so we can deploy to students, parents, teachers, and administrators. When you look at how we're differentiated from other products, there's three things that are just killer. First of all, we're made for K-12, and that means that we build products that K-12 needs. So we do things like elementary assessments and reporting. We have a strong understanding of the needs of parents, which is really important. Of course, in higher ed, you know, kids don't want their parents to know what's going on, but in K-12, they're a critical component. It's very localizable, and what we mean by that is we realize that every district has their own policies and procedures. We can conform to your policies and procedures instead of forcing you to conform to ours. And last but not least, the integration with the district systems makes all the difference in the world. So we've had a nice adoption, a nice set of procedures, private schools, but also nice big public schools as well. Our largest deployment right now is Hillsborough County, which is Tampa, Florida. So we have over 250,000 users there. It's a very rigorous RFP, the selection. More than 20 people on that. There's 14 bidders, and it involved integrating with a let us say, legacy student information system that's mainframe based on COBOL. And we did all that. And not only did we do it, but we did it in spades. So to the best of our knowledge, this is the single most successful software deployment in K-12 in the entire United States. We have over 90,000 unique users every single week. 90,000 students using it. We have over 13,000 students, staff logging in every single week, and over 15,000 parents logging in. This is the system that people use, the platform really that they use to collaborate inside the district. The other thing that's quite interesting is we have very strong support for mobile, and that's important because I don't know if you've noticed this, but you know, this is what the kids carry around. And so by giving strong support for mobile, we mean that we sort of ensure that kids can get the information on the platform that they're used to. Now, why are people using this? One thing is that it saves money. So it's really kind of interesting. You don't tend to think of technology deployments as necessarily saving money. But you know, just on things like printing, the fact that all the communication is now coming home on a device like this means that you save an enormous amount on printing, but also on how you take attendance, the ability to get rid of other software, you know, the fact you don't have to run a separate parent portal, you can do online testing. This all adds up to higher quality information in people's hands when they need it, and of course, saving money. So that's sort of the basic idea behind Edsby. Comprehensive platform, strong support for elementary, drives that engagement of the student, teacher, parent triangle, and of course the analytics gives you new insight into the educational effectiveness. So, any questions about this so far? I was going to do a little bit of a demo, but if anybody has any questions?
There were a couple things that came in, or one thing that came over the chat, and Ben, I feel free to unmute yourself, but education outreach, PD, and grants is the comment that you made.
Oh, I thought you said to put your name and role.
Oh, okay. All right. I gotcha.
I was paying attention to what you wanted.
Okay. No questions at this time, so let's continue.
Sorry.
That's all right.
No problem at all. So that's sort of that's the thing, you know, that's the PowerPoint part of it. But of course, as we know, PowerPoint and reality don't always exactly line up. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to flip to a browser and I'm going to log in and show you the product. So one of the things I really want to emphasize is this is a real production product. We're running out in hundreds and hundreds of thousands of users right now. And I'm going to start by logging in as a teacher. So the first thing that I want to note is that, you know, in your school, this is integrated with the system. So the teacher didn't have to do anything to set this up. And most importantly, you didn't have to do anything to set this up. This is all driven by synchronization with the student information system. You know, typically we're going to set the login up to either be synchronized with O365 or Google Apps for Edu or Microsoft Active Directory, so users don't have to learn a new user ID and password. So Mr. Noland, who is a grade 9 English teacher, logs in, and this is pretty fabulous because already everything is all set up for Mr. Noland because we sync with the systems of record. So he teaches at Tecumseh High, and we're in the High Prairie School District, and we see our school news. So this platform delivers all of this automatically to Mr. Noland. Mr. Noland is teaching a bunch of classes, and he sees them right here. And Mr. Noland didn't have to do anything to make these classes appear. And indeed, at the end of the term, the old classes disappear, and the new classes appear again. But his old classes aren't really gone. They're in the archive, so we can go back and pull information out and reuse it and stuff like that. As much as possible, we've made this very easy for Mr. Noland. Mr. Noland sees his calendar right here. If he needs to take attendance, if you want to use Edsby to do attendance, boom, it's a single click right there. English is at 7:05 and 10:05 and 1:05 and 4:05, and it knows this by syncing with the system of record. Mr. Noland is a member of some groups. We want to make it easy for Mr. Noland to work with groups of people because school is all about collaboration. Some of those are our professional groups. So for example, he happens to teach grade 9 English, and therefore he's a member of the English Teachers Professional Learning Community. And that's all automatic because we know from the SIS that he teaches English. This also might be an extracurricular group like Festival Choir, or even a private group like the Fall Fair or something like that. When Mr. Noland goes into an English class, again, we know things like what the state standards are. Of course, we know who all the students are who are enrolled in there. And you can see Mr. Noland can build a course plan and a course library. You can make a learning journal right there. And if Mr. Noland needs to send a message out to some kids like, hey kids, don't forget we have a quiz tomorrow. Well, you know, how about if we make it about as easy as using something like Twitter or Facebook? And sure enough, he does that, and it's dead simple. The whole goal here has been built to build a modern set of tools that feel like a modern application, make it really easy for the teacher. And in fact, I'm just going to say, please review this for tomorrow. Like that. I'm going to add a resource and I'm going to go find a file. Of course, I can get it from OneDrive or something like that. There we go, right there. A perfectly good RFP response. There we go, like that. And we're going to share that to this class. Again, you can see dead simple for Mr. Noland to use. So what we're going to do now is Mr. Noland is going to log out. And now we're going to log in as a different user. This time we're going to log in as one of the kids who's in Mr. Noland's class, Rory, like this. So again, Incredibly simple for Rory to log in. He uses the same user ID and password that he uses for everything else inside the district. Chances are pretty good he's probably going to be doing this on his mobile, and everything I'm showing you works absolutely identically on your mobile device. So Rory logs in, and the first thing to notice is right there, right in the middle, in his social feed, Rory sees that Mr. Nolan told him to review something for tomorrow, and Rory clicks here and reviews it, and everything is perfect. We've already won at this point because we've given Mr. Nolan a great way to get information to his kids. And for Rory, he's won because you know what? All of his classes, his English, his geography, his math, his science, they're showing up right here, and he gets all of his information in one place. Rory looks over here at his calendar, notice that he can see everything that's going on. He can see his meetings, he can see his groups, he can see his upcoming homework. And he's got 3 unread items in English, and he goes into his English there, and sure enough, there's the stuff specific to English. There's the library right there. So a couple of weeks from now, when he needs to go back and review this file, sure enough, there it is right there and ready for him. Again, we've done everything we can to make this easy for Rory, and that includes things like online submission, sharing of LTI links, the ability to tie back into O365 and OneNote and Google Classroom. Again, the idea here is this is a one-stop shop for Rory. So we're going to log out one more time, and let's just imagine that Rory comes home and he wants to go downstairs and play Minecraft, and he says to his father, "Dad, can I go downstairs and play Minecraft?" And his dad says, "Do you have any homework?" And because Rory happens to be in grade 9 and I have a child in grade 9, I can tell you exactly what Rory is going to say. No, nothing at all. So his dad whips up his phone and he goes here. So his dad logs in like this and like so. So his dad logs in, and you'll notice a couple things. First of all, notice that he sees multiple schools here. And in fact, his school news in the platform is showing the news from all of the schools. The father has a few groups that he belongs to and his own calendar because he might want to see that there's a PA day coming up or something like that. But he scrolls down, and there's his little buddy Rory. And notice that Dad sees an exact copy of everything that Rory sees. He sees his English class. He sees how Rory is doing. He sees that Mr. Nolan has told him to, hang on, Rory, buddy, you know, clearly Mr. Nolan wants you to review this for tomorrow morning. Have you done that? You haven't? Okay, you know, go review it right now. So suddenly the father is now up to speed. The father is seeing exactly what Rory's seeing. He's seeing all the stuff that all the teachers have handed out. He's seeing Rory's calendar. And the other thing, which is really nice, is that if the dad scrolls down a little further, there's his other child, William, and then there's his daughter, Zoe, who I think is in grade 1. So again, the whole point here is that at a glance, the parent is able to see everything that's going on. And that really is the idea behind Edsby, right? We're a platform that allows students, teachers, and parents to get on the same page, to share information, and sort of to drive that educational effectiveness, to allow us to drive high engagement and high value communication between those 3 groups of stakeholders. And the key is,
Scott,
go ahead.
this is Vanna. I do have a question now.
Perfect, because I'm right at the end, so hit me with questions.
Oh, good. Okay. So what kind of professional development or how do you get the parents up to speed? Because I love this idea that the parents can get in, and I know that there are other, at my kids' school, we can go in and check, but a lot of the parents don't go in just on their grade system because there's no support for those parents that don't feel comfortable. So this seems, I like what I'm seeing. I'm just wondering what kind of support do you provide or how do you get the parents or how do you work in partnership with the schools to make sure that the parents are comfortable so that they can be that vigilant with their students or at least work in part, I'm not all for policing your kids, but that I like the fact that at least knowing, okay, there's a quiz coming up, or knowing what kind of communication the teacher is having with the student is empowering.
Exactly. Okay, so my answer to this is probably going to shock you, given the modern state of software companies, but here's how we help parents. We actually answer their phone calls. So we have real live people working right here. And here, so when we do a deployment, so let's backtrack a step. I always like to say this. How many 8-hour PD courses did you go on to start using Facebook? And the answer is, well, 0, right? Because Facebook is a commercial application, it's actually designed to make it easy for you to get started. And when you have questions, there are videos and stuff like that that help you out. So the first step that we did is that we designed Edsby to be really, really easy. In fact, our goal in life is to make it so that whether you're a student or a teacher or a parent, you could get started on Edsby after watching a 2-minute video. But it goes beyond that. When we sell Edsby to a district, we have a process we call Smart Start. Now that's when we do training and stuff like that for people like teachers to sort of show you the more complex parts of Edsby. But we also develop custom training videos and custom getting started videos for your students and your parents. So you can put a video up that'll step parents through exactly how to use Edsby, and you can put that up on your website and link to it, and we help you get the parents on there. And the other thing I should talk a little bit about is the pricing. So one thing we've done here, because we believe in what we're doing here, we've made it so that you don't pay for parent accounts. We charge based on the number of students, and that's why we use the word parents and kind of in quotes, because if a kid goes to his grandmother's after school, she's the one we want to be making sure that little Joey does his homework. So again, we get that information, the guardian information, right from your SIS. You can have multiple parent accounts all pointing to the same kid, and there's no extra charge. And when that parent has a problem, they can call our 800 number and we help them out.
Thank you. That's great. I appreciate that. And I also know with Hillsborough County down in Florida that sometimes they get a bum rap in Florida about their educational system. So I appreciated knowing that you have the backs of the parents there, because everybody wants to do right by their kids. So it's nice that you have that and that you aren't charging a parent fee on top of everything. So that's good to know. I think I jumped in. I think you have some questions in the chat window as well. So I apologize just busting in and unmuting myself, but
no problem at all.
The answer, yeah.
No problem. Thanks for the question. Were there some problems in the chat window? Questions in the chat window? I can't see them. So.
Well, there may be problems, but they're questions, I think, at this point. And Mr. Nolan C., who actually accessed the file to be reviewed prior to class.
Oh man, okay, not yet.
Not yet. All right.
We're doing so. We're actually, this is stuff that we're working on a bunch of stuff right now, and one of the things we're working on is not just the ability to see who's accessed the file, but we're actually working with some textbook publishers so that you can even do things like see what pages they've accessed in the file and how long they've spent on it. Because of course, you want to understand not just who's in your class, but how they're doing. And oftentimes you want that to be proactive, right? Show me which kid hasn't seen this, show me which kid isn't reading their homework. Now, oftentimes teachers know that, but this is important stuff.
Okay, what's the event horizon for something like that?
So that's one that we're working on. That'll come out during this upcoming school year. We're pretty well locked and loaded for the September release, but that's something that's going to come out in the 17-18 school year.
Okay, great. Thank you. We have another question from Dallas. Kind of a slew of questions. Gradebook, question mark, attendance, question mark, assessment, question mark, groups, question mark.
Oh, Dallas. Okay. So I skipped over some of that stuff. So let's go back in as Mr. Nolan like this. Yeah. So let me show you some of the, now that we've given you the overview, some of the more, whoops, hang on. That's the principal, Mr. Ham. So like this. Let me show you some of the stuff that the teacher has. So we'll run through a bunch of different things. Let's start with taking attendance here. So we have a full-blown attendance system inside of Edsby, and this can integrate with your student information system as well. Hang on, I've already taken attendance in this class in my earlier demo. Let's go in right there. And we'll take attendance, and so you can see this is really nice and really slick. These kids are absent, these kids are present. When we're ready, we can share it with the office. And one of the really nice things about attendance is it works on mobile as well, so you can do things like take attendance when you're out of the classroom, or you don't have to access your computer. Within each class, there's a whole series of tools that are available to teachers. So for example, there's a seating plan tool. There's a course planner that lets me set up a complete course plan and also reuse it from year to year as well. There is a complete grade book inside of Edsby. So really, really powerful grade book with full alignment to state standards. So when I add assessment, for example, I can align that to a state or local standard. So I'll just type it with full searching. So there we go right there. We can align it to a standard. We can check for conflicts to see when kids have other assessments. There's full weighting. We have support for many different types of assessment, grading schemes like letter grades, yes, no, 4 levels, multi-strand assessments if your jurisdiction happens to require that. We have the ability to drill down and see how kids are doing against expectations. So for every student, we can see, first of all, how many times we have assessed a given standard, but we can also zoom into an individual student like our little buddy Rory, and we can see how Rory is doing against the individual standards. So again, a very, very, very rich set of assessment tools are available to the teacher. And then at the district level, we also support report cards built into Edsby as well. So we have a full report card system built into Edsby, and this even extends the ability to print report cards. So for example, again, using Hillsborough as an example, we're doing about 200,000 report cards every term. Of those, about 120,000 are printed by the IT department, but 85,000 are printed directly inside of Edsby. So their elementary report cards are printed inside of Edsby every single term. So again, a rich set of tools available to the teacher.
So Scott, can you talk a little bit about how Edsby supports special ed?
Okay, so this is actually quite interesting. When we start looking at the younger grades, one of the really interesting, and I'm going to tie special ed into younger grades, one of the things that's very interesting is, this is one of the things that we find really intriguing about K-12 and why it is so differentiated from higher ed. There's this real gray area between the learner and the parent. And so I'm going to use, let's use grade 1 as an example, and the teacher hands out some spelling words. Now, you know what? We've probably got some kids, they're going to use their iPad, iPod, or iPhone. They're going to go in and get those spelling words. The chances are actually pretty good that there's going to be a parent or caregiver that's going to be the primary person in that class. So if we were to go to a class, and let's just pick this one right here, and I go to the setup, you'll notice that one of the options that I have is I can control what parents can do. And oftentimes what we want to do with something like special ed is we want to let the parent or the caregiver come in and participate in the class with the kid. So, again, to go back to that grade 1 example, it's quite likely that it's a parent who's going to go in and say, hey, it looks like one of the words have a spelling mistake or something like that. So we want to include not only the student, but we want to include that support team that's around the student. The other thing we really want to do, and I'm just going to close that and not save it. Okay, yeah. So the other thing that's really interesting is that, again, let's focus in on a special ed kid. Now, I happen to be logged in as somebody who's teaching grade 7s, but you can sort of see where this is going. If we think about a child, that child inside the school has a support team around them. right? They've got the educational assistant, they've got the classroom teacher, but they also probably have guidance, a vice principal, and stuff like that. And those people need a place to share information securely and safely. And every student inside of Edsby has what we call a panorama. The panorama is the overview of this child, but it's not just a read-only overview. It's actually a place where that team can collaborate. So I'm going to go to Joey's right here. And here we see a bunch of stuff that's about Joey that's sort of factual. His parents and his classes, and I could see what he's written about himself, and I can see what groups he's a member of, and I can see his calendar. But I can also have a discussion right here. So for example, I could share an IEP. I could say, he seems to be doing better at this, or, he seems to be deeply affected by smells inside the classroom, and maybe we should consider moving him to a different classroom or something like that. And the key thing is that when I do that, those observations are going to be shared with the other teachers who teach that child. So you can see here that Mr. Ham, who's the principal, made an observation about Rory, and so that was shared with me, Mr. Noland, because I happen to teach Rory. So we've got this really powerful collaboration and notification system here where we can collaborate about a child.
Can you pull in IEPs from different systems and render them in Edsby?
Okay, you know what? I love these questions. So in fact, it's funny you say that. So one of the challenges with that is that, of course, IEPs are very sensitive. And we don't just want to necessarily pull that in for every teacher. We want to be able to do things like do permissions and access control, so that when Mr. Nolan looks at Joey, if Joey has an IEP, then Mr. Nolan sees the IEP. But if another teacher was to look at that same panorama, the other teacher wouldn't see Joey's panorama because she's not allowed to. And hold on just a sec. We're actually working with an IEP vendor on this right now. And I'm trying to think the name of this. I think it's C. Tucker. Yeah, there we go, like this. So you got to kind of imagine, if you will, but we've actually got this mocked up right here. So ignore the fact that I have to click on it in a class, but you'll notice here that I have used the LTI protocol to, in fact, render this kid's IEP. Now that's going to render right in line on the panorama, but the IEP system will manage the permissions and access controls. So yeah, that's something we're working on right now.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, it's really cool stuff. Okay, a couple things more I want to show you. So I'm just going to log out here. Dallas is hopefully reminding me there. So let me log in one more time. Two more things I want to show you. I want to show you the group stuff because this is very powerful. So I'm going to log in one more time as Mr. Noland. And I mentioned the group stuff. So Edsby has great support for this idea of groups. Some of these groups are ad hoc. So for example, I could create a new group right here very easily, but a lot of the groups are automatically set up. So for example, you'll notice that I am a member of the English teacher group. Hang on, no, it's not the English teacher group, English grade 10, there we go. No, that's serves me right for demo. Oh, grade 9 English teachers, there we go. So I'm a member of the grade 9 English teachers professional learning community. And you can see that in this PLC, we've got all kinds of great information, right? There's the moderators. There's some information that's important, so we've pinned it. There's a knowledge base where we can share best practices. We can share course plans. We have a library of good information that I can use as a teacher. But the key thing is that you can see there's 81 members in here. These are all set up completely automatically. You can see that this says automated membership. So we can set up groups that are either within a school or across school, and they automatically put people in based on what grade they're in, what subjects they teach, whether they're a staff member or not. And again, very, very, very powerful stuff in there. The other thing we've been working on, and it's you're asking about upcoming stuff. Let me just see if we've got the searching turned on. Yeah, so you'll notice here we also have a full permissions and access controlled searching system. So let's suppose that Mr. Noland is a new teacher and needs to teach Romeo and Juliet for the first time, and he's never done this before. Look at that. There's some lessons that fellow teachers have shared with me, and so I can go and find those lessons and reuse them. So very, very powerful searching permissions and access control. And then last but not least, I've talked a little bit about analytics. In order to show that, I just have to run and log into a slightly different server here. So I'll log on as a principal. And what we've done here is we have analytics completely integrated to Microsoft's Power BI application. And this allows us to do very powerful district-wide analytics over very, very, very large data sets. So for example, I might be interested in my students at risk or something like that. So again, you can see here that I can very quickly get in, drill down, go to a particular school or something like that. So I might be looking at a particular school, and we work with our customers to deploy the appropriate dashboards to them.
Looks great.
Oh, thanks. Thanks.
A couple of kind of adjacent questions. Can you talk to me about what you guys doing with OER?
You mean like open educational resources?
Correct.
So we haven't done a lot with OER right now, and the reason for that is that we've actually been focused in on a lot of the underpinnings. So the ability to search, sort, manage, and embed. Which, as you can see, we've got running now. Our long-term goal is to make it easier to incorporate open resources into the classroom. Our initial focus has been on incorporating LTI assets. So we have a really powerful way of creating and embedding LTI learning tools interoperability resources. The ability to import arbitrary resources into a class is something that we're going to be working on next year. But the LTI stuff is really nice because you basically just add it like an attachment. So I might say, take this quiz like this. I'll add a resource. I'm going to add an Edsby app, and it's going to be ChemVantage, and I click that like so. And I've actually just added access to an external application, in this case ChemVantage. So when I click on here again through the magic of LTI, I'm now authenticated on this application as a teacher, and I'll say I want these kids to do a quiz on chemical reactivity, for example. And now when the kids click on that link, they're going to be off in ChemVantage land, entirely driven through LTI.
Great, very cool.
Yeah.
Additional questions from the group?
Okay.
Feel free to post them in the chat window or unmute yourself and ask the question in real time. All right, well, I'll keep going then.
Okay.
So I'm assuming this solution is hosted, and if so, where is it hosted?
That's actually a really interesting question. Not so much for you guys, because I'm sure the answer is why. Of course, it's hosted in the U.S. So we do something that's actually quite interesting. So our hosting partner is Microsoft Azure. In fact, we're tightly integrated with O365 as well. I sort of haven't shown that, but because not everybody's on O365. We run on Azure. But we use what we call a clustered architecture, and this means that we run on specific Azure data centers. So Azure has 5 data centers in the US. We typically run on the data center that is closest to the customer. But this is actually quite, believe it or not, this is really important for customers outside the US, where they might, for geographic reasons, want their content to be hosted physically close to them. So for example, we're doing a project right now in New Zealand, and all of their data and hosting is done on the Azure data center that's in New Zealand. So it's actually quite neat.
Okay, as a kind of a corollary to that question, are you because it seems like you're very leveraging the Microsoft platform. Do you have plans, or are you currently engaging in student data sync? And talk about LTI, but school data sync, what's your plans and roadmap there?
Okay, so that's a really interesting one, where we're working really closely with Microsoft, And our plan, our expectations are we're actually going to be delivering two different types of school data sync. So number one, we are going to be able to take advantage of school data sync. But the other thing which is really interesting is we're actually working with Microsoft so that they can take advantage of our student information system integration so that they can drive student data sync from the Edsby integrations. It's really cool stuff, actually.
Okay, great. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that, or?
Yeah. So what's really interesting is that there's so school data sync is really cool stuff, really interesting technology. And for those of you who are looking at doing O365 or one-to-one deployments with Microsoft devices, school data sync is actually quite important because they have a new application called Intune. And Intune is what's going to allow you to do very large hardware deployments, like, set up these 100,000 devices to work for the kids in my school. If you happen to run one of the platforms that are currently supported by School Data Sync, which I believe is Skyward and PowerSchool, that works perfectly. But there's a bunch of SISs that aren't supported by School Data Sync currently that we support, and so we're going to be exposing the data in a format that Microsoft can sync from, and that's going to allow even those districts that the districts that are running Edsby to take advantage of School Data Sync, even though School Data Sync might not support their particular SIS.
Great. So we got another question. Leo, I see you posted a question. What will it mean for a district? Can you provide some context to that question? Leo, you're out there? What will it mean for a district school data sync?
Oh, so school data sync, now this is, of course, not up my alley. This is more Microsoft's alley. But what Microsoft is working on doing is making as many of their O365 components as possible aware of the data structures inside of schools. In particular, what the schools are, what the classes are, who the students are, who the teachers are. And then they're making this available as part of their standard API. So that's what School Data Sync is. It's actually a very, very clever move, I think, on Microsoft's part to essentially expose the underlying data that they're using to do things like their large one-to-one deployments. And of course, this also flows through to other Microsoft products like Power BI. It's definitely worth investigating.
But unfortunately, it is not parent aware.
No, it's not parent aware. And the other thing is that it's kind of interesting. It's also fairly limited in the sense that, so for example, I'm logged in as Mr. Noland here, and I see that my English class is at 7:05, and I want to look at attendance and stuff like that. That level of detail isn't currently available in School Data Sync, but it is going to be really important for any schools that are considering doing one-to-one deployment of Windows devices. And the other thing is, you guys have probably seen the announcement. There's some very, very, very interesting and inexpensive Windows 10 devices coming available for this year.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Other questions? Okay. I got another one.
Okay.
Cost and time to implement Edsby.
Okay, so the cost, the list cost for Edsby is $5 per student per year. And as I mentioned before, we charge per student. So we don't charge for staff, we don't charge for parents, we charge for students. In terms of the implementation time, that's actually a really interesting question. So because we synchronize with your systems of record, once we've done the sync, which happens on our dime, we make sure that the sync works. Once we've done that syncing, of course, it's really kind of miraculous, because on the first day that people start using it, it actually looks pretty well like this. You've got your groups, you've got your classes, you've got your timetable. People are logging in with their same user ID and password. So I'll use Hillsborough as an example. they did 100% district-wide deployment to every single teacher and every single student in the district. Their first day of classes was the 23rd of August, and we started implementation on the 15th of April. So it took us May, June, July, it took just over 4 months to do 100% district-wide deployment out to 200,000 students and teachers.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, we got another question in the chat. We're a G Suite, this comes from Brian Tobin. We're a G Suite school district with Skyward and Canvas already tied together. Can we provide a reason why I'd switch to Edsby?
well, I've got to say, actually, and I'm a pretty realistic guy. Now, I'll say a couple things there. So obviously, you know, you guys are pretty advanced. You're on G Suite, which gets you some good communication. You're on Canvas, which clearly gets you a good solution, you know, good-ish solution for your higher ed or for your upper years. I think where Edsby really differentiates itself is in our support for parents, first of all. Both Google and Canvas have very poor support for parents. I know this because I said at the beginning, my local school district where my child goes uses Google, and there's no way for me to see what's going on. The other thing which is really important is that the way we handle assessment is much more appropriate for the younger grades as well. So Canvas, you know, classical higher ed product, gradebook looks like, you know, lots of grades and that's it. But in terms of keeping authentic product, work product, and sharing content and stuff like that, I think Edsby's a lot stronger. But, you know, with that said, you guys are obviously a pretty advanced district already.
All right, additional questions? Are there features of Edsby that support sharing courses and data among multiple districts, such as regional services agencies or statewide traffic?
That's a really interesting question. The question is their ability to share content outside of districts? And the answer is there is, as a matter of fact. So these groups that I'm showing you right here, they actually can span districts as well. So I happen to be showing you ones here that are entirely within the district, but there's nothing to stop you from having groups that span districts. So these grade 9 English teachers, for example, we might have a community of learning with, you know, let's just say 6 districts in it or something like that. There's nothing to stop you from setting up the professional learning community that could span 6 districts so that all the grade 9 teachers across all 6 districts are able to collaborate together and share best practices.
Now, can you comment about how that can apply for regional service agencies like RICS, BOCES, ESUs, things like that?
Yeah, it's actually quite interesting. So we actually, from our first class days, we have a fair number of friends who are out at BOCES in Ohio or
you know, I think it'll be good to go over to Trot here and see that. Sure. And let me tell.
I think that's crosstalk.
I think so too. Anyway, yeah, and in Texas as well. So we do see that running this in an RSC is a really good idea. We don't currently have any deployments in RSCs, but for sure it makes a lot of sense.
And Scott, can you just speak to the data aggregation components too, and what that means to regional service agencies and even statewide projects?
Or even countrywide, yeah. So one of the things that's quite interesting when you're looking at RSCs or statewide deployments, or we're working on hopefully doing a countrywide deployment. One thing that's quite interesting is that the fact that Edsby can use Edsby Link to integrate with multiple districts, including multiple heterogeneous SISs, that does allow us to do data aggregation. And so when we talked about things like this analytics here, we can actually aggregate data from multiple, not just from multiple systems within a district, but from multiple districts and aggregate that all together into a single comprehensive analytics application that spans multiple school districts, potentially up to a state or even a country level.
Great. Additional questions? I'll make that awkward pause to force people to start answering.
I was going to say, I just checked the time, 1:52. We're getting pretty towards a natural end here, I think.
Scott, you mentioned Edsby Link. Can you tell us more about what that is and why that is?
Right. So Edsby Link, if we harken back to my original presentation here, so when we look at what we need, so if you think about Edsby, in order to run inside a district, we need information that's going to allow us to do all the things that you want: classroom management, the assignment, the group collaboration, the timetabling, the engagement. It's really important to understand that from a district point of view, the last thing you want to do is to give people another system to administer, right? You don't want any additional, not just technical total cost of ownership, but actually human resource total cost of ownership. And you already have a system of record. So for example, when little Joey, when his mom brings him into the front office in a school and wants to register Joey for the district, you already have a system to put Joey in, right? Your SIS typically. Data's gonna flow through to Google Apps to Ed. You're gonna have things like your HR database, your identity management, your authentication. And it's really important to understand that we use a tool called Edsby Link that lets us integrate with all of those systems. And the whole goal here is to make sure that there's no additional overhead on your district to run all of this. So I'll go back to Hillsborough as a great example. So when we look at this, the thing that I personally am most proud of when we look at this slide is not that I've got 90,000 kids logging in every day or 13,000 staff or 15,000 parents. It's that there's not a single new piece of work that had to be done by people inside the district to make this work. This fits into their existing standard operating procedures. And so for Marge in the front office, when she's adding that new kid, she just still does that in the SIS. It works as it always has. And Edsby tracks along with the system of records inside the district. And it's Edsby Link that lets us do that integration.
Great. I think the next question comes from Scott Isaacson, related to student mobility. Could a student along with his current and historical data be transferred from one district to another?
Okay, that's a really interesting question. So the reason this is really interesting is, so the place that we're doing this, working on this, countrywide deployment is New Zealand. And they're really interesting because they don't have school districts. They have 2,000, so you guys just think about this for a sec. They have 2,500 schools and no districts. Every single school is independent and every single school runs their own SIS. And this is really a big problem because what happens is when kids move between schools, everything about the kid is lost, even when they go from like elementary to middle. And so we've actually been doing a bunch of work to make it so that you'll be able to take the student record and move it between schools. So not there today, but very much something that we're interested in.
In the New Zealand use case or in the US use case?
Oh, no. We're going to build it as a basic part of the product. The challenge isn't so much the moving. The challenge isn't so much the moving the student, it's the mismatch of data between, so, school A uses a 4-level assessment, level 1, 2, 3, 4, and school B uses a letter assessment, A, B, C, D, F. And the question is, how do you map all that information correctly and fairly and stuff like that? It's a data mapping problem as opposed to a
transformation piece of it, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's challenging, but it's doable, and it's something we're really interested in.
Great. Well, we've got about a few minutes left. So any other additional questions or comments? All right, with that, Scott and the entire Edsby team, thank you so much for taking the time to share some of the great stuff that you guys are doing. I'm very pleased with what I've seen so far and look forward to talking in the near future. And thank you everybody that took the time to participate in this webinar, and great questions, and I appreciate the audience.
Thank you guys very much.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.